Dear Lord, thank you for this day that we've been blessed to receive. Thank you for the opportunity to come together. As we look at end time events that are rapidly drawing to a close in front of our eyes, we ask for discernment to understand these events and the implications that they pose for us. We ask for your guidance and the outpouring of your Spirit that we may better understand, that we may come into this knowledge and be filled with the Spirit. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So through this presentation, I'll be asking some questions of you. So please feel free to unmute and answer any questions that are posed. And today we're looking at Acts 27, something I've been looking at for a little while. And if you see on the board behind me, you'll see the two reform lines of Acts 27. And we know that this is telling us a story of Paul, Aristarchus, and Luke getting onto a ship at Caesarea and then sailing to Myra. And then we see them board another ship and travel until they become shipwrecked. We understand from this parable that we've been given that it takes us back to a point or period in time with the number of 273, which identifies particular nations and their conduct through that period of time. So this line is a little bit separate from the other reform lines that we have. We're aware that we have the line of the 144,000, the line of the priests, the line of the Levites, and then the Nethinims. What each of these reform lines teach is about a group of people and their walk along a reform line. What the line behind us teaches, also known as the fifth line, and how it varies from the other reform lines that we have here, is that it's not talking about people. We understand that it's a parable of a boat, and Elder Tessa told us that this boat represents USA and Adventism, and that our job in this line is to forget about the people on the boat and concentrate on the vessels themselves. So when we have these two lines, we have forget about the people who live in America and forget about the people who are in the church, Adventism. So just by way of memory, is anyone able to tell me, how do these ships relate to the USA and Adventism? How do we make that connection? And if anyone in the room here wants to answer, they're welcome to answer.
Should I try?
Yes, please do.
So in Acts 27, we have Felix and Festus. We have King Agrippa. So Felix and Festus symbolizes America, which is the two presidents, and King Agrippa as Adventism.
Thank you, Gambaki. That's great. Are those people on the boats at all? Or are they separate? So
They
the
were
point
not
that
in
I'm
the
just
boat.
highlighting there. Yeah, thank you. They're not on the boats. They are separate. We link them to the boats, but they're not on the boats. Just further highlighting that we're not looking at people or individuals here. We're looking at something different. So we're, as you've just said, we're taking the symbology of the conversations between Paul and then Felix and Festus, referring to the state power in that time. And then when Paul is in front of Agrippa, being the church power. Is anyone able to tell me where is this movement located within this line? Where do you see the movement? We can see Adventism. Where do we see the movement?
Is it Paul?
Paul? Okay. But if I've just said to forget about the people on the boat, then concentrate on the vessels, my point would be that we don't see this movement within that structure. So we've been told, Elder Tessa's given us the answers, that we have USA and Adventism. Can someone tell me which one's the USA and which one is Adventism? Which line?
They're both on the same line.
Sure, thank you. So both Adventism on both lines. And which one is a good ship and which one is a bad ship? Hopefully, if we use the same methodology, we'd come to the same answer, that they're both good ships and they're both bad ships. So if you've got your Bibles, can you open to Revelation 12, verse 15 and 16? It's a familiar verse. You'll have all read it multiple times. Revelation 12, 15 and 16. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood unto the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away unto the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So can someone tell me in this verse here, particularly verse 16, who is the earth?
United States.
Thank you, Molly. The United States. So we've been told that at the beginning of this reform line, which is focusing on two vessels, there are two systems, or another word that's been given is institutions, that were raised up at the time of the end for America and for Adventism, that were to be a help for God's servants on earth. So we had the earth being America, which was providing a safer haven from Europe, from the persecutions that we see within Europe. Adventism was that church that was here in this same time period, given that opportunity as the USA was rising into prominence and into power, to make use of the benefits that are associated with coming into a new institution. So straight away we can see that there are good and bad within both of these systems or structures. The USA has a good constitution, or an institution would be another word we could use for it. This study is the study on institutions. So at the beginning, both USA and Adventism have got good things in place, but they've also got things that they need to work on. As you know, through the USA, there is slavery begins to be addressed, but it's not completely sorted out. And as we go through the Constitution, you'll find amendments are added to the Constitution. An amendment, the definition of amendment is a minor change or a small change. I'm just going to read out a quote to you. This is great controversy, and it escapes me where it's from just a moment. I'll find it later. And he had 2 horns like a lamb. The lamb-like horns indicate youth, innocence, and gentleness, fitly representing the character of the United States when presented to the prophet as coming up in 1798. So we see the good qualities there within the United States. Ellen White focuses on these. Among the Christian exiles who first fled to America and sought an asylum from royal oppression and priestly intolerance were many who determined to establish a government upon the broad foundation of civil and religious liberties. So they've come from persecution from the old world. They've seen I'll say it simply, a church and state relationship within Europe. They've escaped that persecution. America was the land that they've come to. Now they have an opportunity to set up a system or an institution that is going to do better than what they had within Europe. Their views found place in the Declaration of Independence, which sets forth the great truth that all men are created equal and endowed with the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the Constitution guarantees the people the right of self-government, providing that representatives elected by the popular vote shall enact and administer the laws. This is a particular point that I want to pull out of this passage. Constitution guarantees to the people the right of self-government, providing that representatives, people elected in power by the popular vote, shall enact and administer the laws. So that's becomes the issue there. Those represented need to make sure that they're enacting those laws in order for that constitution to guarantee people's rights. Freedom of religious faith was also granted, every man being permitted to worship God according to the dictates of his conscience. Republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles of the nation. These principles are the secret of its power and prosperity. The oppressed and downtrodden throughout Christendom have turned to this land with interest and hope. Millions have sought its shores, and the United States has risen to a place among the most powerful nations on earth. So that's, again, is a familiar quote for us all, I'm sure, from the Great Controversy. And we're looking at these institutions that have been set up, and particularly in the USA, I'm going to focus on the Constitution. So Elder Tess gave us these subjects, Acts 27, in 2017, 2018. And then, as far as I'm aware, sometime in 2019, we're given an application of those ships represents institutions. And again, specifically Adventism and the USA. But the Midnight Cry gave us a lot more than just those two institutions. You might remember the presentations that have followed since. We've got the counterfeit line, we have the Protestantism, we have an understanding of feminism. All these were traced back from the beginning, even sometimes before 1798, and coming to their eventual close or culmination. So institutions has become a popular term that I am trying to wrap my head around what it means, its implications, and I have a shallow understanding of it. So hence why we're here talking about institutions. Particularly to understand the implications that institutions have within a society, what they're designed to do and how they are to help. Part of the problem that we have within this movement is that when someone famous gets up and presents a study, there is a word that is used, and I'm saying in this case it's institutions, and we grab hold of that word and we continue to use it vigorously without understanding what it means and how it affects us. So it becomes a catch cry or a slogan. And if you're like me, then we overuse these. We use them so readily because they're a cheat answer to provide. We'll say, oh yeah, institutions, the institutions are falling. But what does that look like? So it becomes a cliche. It's a very generic answer for a complex study or a complex word and the meanings behind it. So then when we keep using this word, misapplying it, then we miss what the author is saying about this word. Whether it's Ellen White, whether it's Elder Tess, Elder Parminder, whoever is up the front and speaking, and a word is grabbed out of their presentation and it is used as a cliche, then that is often getting us into trouble for not understanding it properly. And then we eventually find ourselves in a position where we're unable to ask the author of their study, what did they mean when they used that word? We can't ask Ellen White. We can't ask Elder Tess. So then we're trying to work this out for ourselves. So institutions became popular, or the word became popular for us within the movement in 2017, 18, early 19. And it's giving us many stories, the Midnight Criers, that are helping us to understand institutions and how they work within society. And we've seen that they have started from 1798 and go through to the close of their existence, whenever that is, depending on the institution. So Adventism in the USA, we say, are shipwrecked at the Sunday law. So can anyone tell me what an institution is? Can you give me a definition of what an institution is? I probably shouldn't have led with the idea that we've been misusing the word, because no one's going to want to speak up, but that's my fault. If anyone has a thought on what an institution is, please feel free to speak up. I'll take that as a no.
It
Are there
depends.
examples?
Okay.
It depends. It
Yeah.
depends on what view you're using to define the institution. Because if you go to the world, you ask the world what the definition is. If you go to Adventists, you ask them what the definition is. If you go to the movement, you ask them what the definition is. So there's different layers of defining the institution itself, depending where you apply it as well.
I agree with that, Harry. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, if we have examples, then, you know, a university can be an institution, a church, a government, any system that has principles pertaining to that particular system, that makes a structure, that makes it work.
I agree with that, Josephine. But in order for us to be able to label it an institution, there must be a definition, a working definition that we're able to then hold over that term.
Do you want me
Catherine?
to? Oh, sorry.
One
Go,
moment,
Catherine.
Lynn.
Let Catherine speak.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I can't provide a clear definition, but you know, examples sprung to mind of a school, a church, a university, but we also have Sabbath, we have marriage, all of those institutions. It seems to be, it's something that connects a group of people together, or in marriage it might be two people, but it's something that holds people together. So, you know, there might be laws involved or rules, but I'm not really sure more than that, but that was my starting point.
Thank you, Catherine. Lynn?
I was just going to give sort of more dictionary type definitions. So I don't know whether that's helpful, but basically like an organisation can be an institution, like Catherine just mentioned, some of those potential organisations. You've also got practices or laws like marriage, or something that you then describe as an institution because it's become a practice or an accepted practice. They're in the form of nouns, obviously. You can institute something, which is more of a verb. So it's like when you're enacting something in a way, if you're instituting a proceedings, for example. But I think for our purposes, we're looking more at the noun, maybe, which is more the things like an organisation or a practice. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Thank you, Lynn. Brendan?
I'm probably going to lean towards what Catherine was saying, and I'm going to put a stake in the ground and say we're not talking about buildings here. I think we're talking about a practice or a set of guidelines or laws that a group of people adhere to.
Okay.
I don't think we're talking about universities, like organisation of buildings or something like that. I think it's a common set of like values, practices I'm going to put a stake in the ground and say I think that's what it means. Again, backed up by Sabbath and marriage. It's a set of, it's a practice, it's a law that people adhere to, come together with. It's not a building.
Sure.
It's not a university. But let's see.
Okay. Thank you, Brendan. That's good. Thank you, everyone, for your input. So the idea behind that experiment to ask for the different definitions of institution is to just show what Harry was pointing out, is that there is a lot of different definitions for institutions, and it does depend on who you ask as to the answer that you're going to get. And so, for example, if you ask a sociologist, what is an institution? They're going to give you their answer from a sociology background, how this works within society. If you ask an economist, what is an institution? They're going to give you their definition from their working knowledge of the economy and how that impacts institutions. So I'm going to say that a institution rules, roles, and enforcement of these rules and roles. And these rules, roles, and the enforcement of these rules and roles structure our human interaction one with another, or particularly within an institution.
Graeme,
So yes, Molly?
I thought the institution is a group of people that come together because of a certain belief system and support whatever goes to whatever they believe.
I'm going to take the study behind us here, Acts 27, and I'm going to take the advice of Elder Tess, who says, ignore the people. So I don't want to discredit what you're saying, but for this presentation, I am ignoring the people that are on the boat and focusing on the ship itself. So what is
It's
the
interesting.
function? Yep.
It's interesting you mentioned about the boat, because when you fully focus on the boat, it's only designed for one thing: to float, to stay afloat. And if you grab the set of rules that you just wrote up there, William Miller has rules as well. And I believe that that's a lot of methods that's been used to read and study and explain things. I always probably found it on the rules that William Miller has used in his time. So when you're coming back to the boat, I see the boat as something that floats on water as well. And it's designed to survive in certain circumstances.
Thank you.
So is the rules. It's the same thing with the rules. If the rules were the institution itself, it's supposed to keep you navigated on the proper path.
Yeah. The boat is designed to take us from one point to another safely. And that is the function of an institution, to get us from one point to another safely. So what is the function of an institution? It is to help to structure environments where people are protected, where they feel safe, and where they are treated properly. So institutions facilitate coordination and trust, as well as make interactions between people smoother. The way they do that is through these rules, these roles, and the enforcement of these rules. If these rules weren't enforced, you could do what you wanted. Yeah. So for an institution to be effective, the people who are operating within this institution need to understand the limits of the institution and need to understand what the rules and the roles of enforcement are so that they can have a cohesive institution. So for an example, you and I within this movement, we need to understand our vows. When we don't understand our vows, we have this non-coherent or incoherent group, and the beliefs could be anything. We start to see a breakdown of that understanding. If you have a look within America, just focusing, you have a question? Focusing in America, just on the Constitution, we have this list of laws written in the Constitution. And we understand that as those laws are written, if you break them, you are going to be receiving some sort of punishment for breaking these rules or laws. What we're seeing is a second topic come into discussion on institutions. So institutions by itself is an easy word, and understanding that they are rules and roles and enforcement of those rules and roles. But there's another key point to understanding institutions. Institutions are made up in two parts. We have formal institutions and we have informal institutions. Thank you. So we have formal institutions and informal institutions. Formal institutions are these rules. If I use this movement as an easy example, I'm going to say that the formal institution within this movement is the vows. The informal institutions are those customs and norms and traditions and other minor rules that are not written down. I'll write non-written rules. We understand when we break these rules, these formal institutions, we are going to get punished. We have these non-written rules, these informal institutions, which help guide and structure our interactions with each other. An example, a bad example, it's an easy example. I am to present at 10:45 this morning. If I'm not there at 10:45, I have broken that informal rule that we have. I have disrespected the people that are here. I've disrespected the people who are watching. So that's just a very basic understanding of what an informal institution is. When these two institutions, the formal and the informal, do not align, when we break these rules here, these formal institutions become of no effect. You lose, the society breaks down and the rules become ineffective. And this is part of what we're seeing in America right now. We're seeing Donald Trump, or we're hearing that Donald Trump is attacking the institutions. You'll hear that over and over. You'll see all the articles. What does that mean, that he's attacking the institutions? Can anyone out there tell me what institutions is he attacking? And how is he attacking them?
So one example that springs to okay, sure. I'll speak a bit louder. Sorry. A basic non-written rule is that a government official should be honest and tell the truth. Sure. And that I feel that that's one that he's challenging. Okay.
So you're going to identify that Donald Trump is attacking the informal institutions there, the non-written rules. Another one you could write about is the lies. He tells so many lies compared to a lot of other presidents that have come before him. Anybody else? Does anyone have any thoughts on where Donald Trump, I'm picking on him because he's an easy target and he's present at the moment, not here in the room, but in history? Brendan?
Well, he attacks judges who are presiding over him and people in the court. So that no one does that.
In what way does he attack the judges?
With his words. So it's in the, I guess, the field of public opinion. So he's out there abusing them in front of cameras that flings mud at them, I guess.
Sure.
So dishonesty, it comes back to lies, but he's just attacking those who he sees are his enemies and those who are trying to hold his feet to the fire, as in he's breaking laws. He's being indicted for doing the wrong thing according to the laws of the land, the formal laws, and he's attacking the people who are trying to hold him accountable to the alleged things he's done wrong.
Okay. So I'll go back to the points that you mentioned there. I'm going to take this away, the vowels, and this is going to be the Constitution. This is America. This is looking at a state power. You've said that he's attacking judges and lawyers and those sorts of things. So we can say
court administrators,
the legislative and judicial branches.
Yes. Justice
Department.
Yeah.
But he hasn't changed the Constitution in any way.
No.
The point that I want to make here is that he is attacking these.
Yeah.
These are the things that he's attacking.
I'd go with that.
What that allows you to do is keep democracy in place, keep the Constitution in place, yet work around it and do what you like.
That's what Putin did.
Yeah.
Russia
is still a democracy.
Apparently, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as according to the dictionary definition. Thank you for that.
Yeah, he's gutting the informal, which destroys the formal.
Yes.
Well, it makes it a toothless tiger.
Yes. So if you Yep. Ray?
So just on your comment there, Brendan, about that's what Putin did. I think Putin's behavior shows that he might have paid lip service to the formal stuff and whatnot, but the people recognize that there's been a severe change in the informal as well, because they all know that Putin's killed Prigozhin, but no one will ever say that publicly. They might all know it because they know there's corruption, but they're never going to say that. So it's kind of shifted the non-written rules and those informal things.
Thank you, Ray. So when we look at Ellen White and how Ellen White uses the word institution, she's a really prolific user of the word. If you go into your computer and you go onto the CD and search through the writings, you'll notice that if you take institution in the singular and then the plural, you'll have over 5,000 uses of the word. So far through all of my searching, the majority of the way that they have been used is in regards to topics that we've mentioned earlier. Health topics, the Sabbath. She'll mention the spurious Sabbath or Sunday. She mentions marriage, the institutions of learning. This is within Adventism that she's identifying these. So their universities and their schools that they had created. She'll list publishing institutions. So all the books and pamphlets and leaflets that were created, as well as the Lord's Supper and the temple services from ancient Israel. So these are the way that she is using institutions, identifying that they're different groups or spheres within the Church of Adventism that come under a set of rules, roles, and the enforcement of those rules and roles. Institutions are wonderful when they are working, but they have a weakness that we've just talked about. And depending on how you want to look at it, there is an argument for a couple of weaknesses. We're going to keep it at the USA. Keep this drawing behind us for the USA. What's the first biggest problem of an institution? Any thoughts? Brendan?
Relies on people.
Relies on people?
Following the non-written rules.
Okay, yep. That's obviously the big one. Because there is no punishment for anything here, because these rules are informal, not written down, there's not a punishment associated. You can do what you want here to break these rules and there's no punishment. So there's no hindrance of these, of breaking these rules. The other thing is, and I think they're both connected, is the election of officials. We are going to elect, America is going to elect a president. While we have a good president, and I'm going to say Obama is a good president, the Constitution is followed and the non-written rules are followed as well. And we have a cohesion within that institution, within that society, in this case, the USA. Yeah, Brendan.
Would I be right in saying that democracy allows people to break the informal non-written rules? Is that the break? Sorry.
No, it's a good thought. Thank you. It may cover it in a little bit. I'll offer another alternative and see if that is going to answer the question. If not, we'll come back to it. So an example of how a perfect institution works. Where do we go back to the perfect institution? Where do we see it? Where can you identify the first perfect institution? Because I've said that America is good and bad. Its institution is good and bad. So where do we go? We go back to Eden. Eden institutions were established there. And we had a being, God, who followed the rules and followed the non-written rules. Then I'm going to say Adam and Eve elected a different person. Let's say Lucifer. And Lucifer didn't attack these. And Lucifer came over and attacked the informal institutions. So after Eden, we have a continuing line of the history of this earth from, I'll just say, Eden to the second advent. This is identified in the statue of Daniel. We have these institutions being good for a little while in certain hands and being terrible in other situations, to where civilizations are wiped out as a result. Even when God selects a person to have charge over these institutions, when does God select a person? If you go back to Israel, Nebuchadnezzar, sure. Think of Israel, think of the church. Samuel, yep. Things do well. And then what about Saul or David? Things don't do so well. So even God selecting this person over these institutions doesn't help break the problem. And that problem that you identified is this problem that these two are so connected that if you break these informal rules, this becomes powerless. This constitution, this institution becomes powerless to provide what it was meant to do at the start, which Ellen White says in that quote is to guarantee the safety, I think, of the people, the inhabitants, which is what the vessel is designed to do. It's designed to transport you, Acts 27, from one point to another safely. But it can't do that when these informal institutions are disregarded. So institutions is a big topic, not planning on being able to solve all the world's issues today. There was a person who won a Nobel Prize on institutional economics. So taking the word institutions, understanding institutions, and then just focusing on one little point of it. If that's institutions, just focusing on the economics of these things. So the fact that they gave out a Nobel Prize for that means that it's a massive subject. I'm just going to read out a quote from this person. Institutions are all about how you structure a society in a moment of time and over a period of time. So at any given moment, but then also understanding that this institution is designed to last a period of time. And to deal with issues and problems that you arise within society. And there are going to be issues and problems arise within society. Institutions begin with cognitive science, and continues up to the way we organize societies, understanding how we view the world, understanding how we organize or structure societies, understanding how the mind works and how we got the beliefs that we have and how that has shaped the way we view one another and the world as a consequence to deal with each other within the world. Formal and informal institutions. If they're not matching, you're going to have a breakdown within society. And these informal institutions are the rules and the guidelines written to complement these rules here. When the formal rules can't work as a result of these informal institutions not being adhered to. So in order for us to have this healthy, well-functioning institution, we need this combination of both. And if I bring this back within the movement, we're going to say that these are vows. These are still the non-written rules. But in order to have a safe institution, we are looking at a change of heart. Because that's the only way you can protect these non-written rules. You can never write enough rules here that you disregard these unwritten formalities, these unwritten
Graeme,
rules.
Can you put equality there?
Sure. Yep. Thank you, Molly. So we're coming up to an election in, well, hundreds of elections, maybe not hundreds, lots of elections in the year 2024. We know it's a year of elections. And part of what I was trying to point out with the idea of God electing an official and then the people electing official. So in America, I'm going to use America as an example. All the people who can vote in America are going to vote, and their outcome will give an answer. But we learnt before through just a very basic understanding that from Eden through to the end of the world, whether God elected an official or whether humans elected official, the same issue arose. So if we take this out of the question and we say that it's not in the people's hands, it's in other people's hands, I'll draw your attention to 2016. Elder Tess talked about Donald Trump coming in. We got very excited because we saw Donald Trump as being the president. Clap, clap, we're wonderful. Then she turns around and says, why didn't we see Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton? So this is the electoral selection process that goes on before the people have a vote. So this determines who is going to go up there. So this year it might be, I don't know who else is running with Biden, but I'll say, for example, Kamala Harris. I don't think she's running. So these two people, there'll be other people who select these people. The general masses of USA don't select who is to be their primary candidate. The same with the Republican Party. Haley, thank you. So we see that there's an election process that selects these people before the people here have a choice of either a Democrat or a Republican. And so just looking at the implications that that has. We will close there and then I will answer questions if I am able to for you. So if you're able to kneel, we'll close in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day that we've been blessed to receive. Thank you for the opportunity to come together. Thank you for history and for the ability to study and learn and grow. As we get things wrong, as we adjust them, as we come to healthier and more holistic understandings, we ask for your guidance and grace that we may understand to understand where we've been wrong in the past and how to change it, that we may come into a more realistic and holistic understanding of the events that are coming before us, the tests that are coming, and how they are playing out before us. Please continue to pour out your Spirit that we may learn and grow. In Jesus' name, amen.